To them, he was just security. A figure behind a desk. A badge scanner. A body in the background. As we dive into this story, don't forget to like and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe for more powerful ones. Every morning for 17 years, Harold Lewis stood at the glass doors of Riddle Partners before the sun had fully risen, adjusting his tie with practiced precision. He always arrived 15 minutes early. Not because anyone asked him to. No one noticed if he did. But Harold believed in showing up, in standing tall even when no one was looking. His uniform was always crisp. His shoes shined. His face calm. "Morning, Harold," the receptionist said as she walked past, not bothering to look up from her phone. She said it like reciting a line she'd memorized years ago and couldn't quite forget. "Hey, man," the younger XX mumbled as they brushed by him, earbuds in, their coffee cups in one hand and their self-importance in the other. Most of them didn't know his last name. Some didn't know he had one at all. To them, he was just security. A figure behind a desk. A badge scanner. A body in the background. He opened doors. Checked IDs. Patrolled the empty halls during late-night board meetings. He was there when the company celebrated deals with champagne, and he was still there sweeping the shards of broken flutes when everyone else had gone home. They never asked him what he thought, what he dreamed, what he'd lost. But Harold paid attention. He listened. He watched how people moved, how they carried their power like shields. He saw the way the partners dismissed the janitors, the delivery men, the temps. He noticed the way the firm's only black intern left without explanation after 6 weeks. He watched a junior assistant cry quietly in a bathroom stall, then return to her desk with a forced smile. He said nothing. He just wrote things down. Every break, Harold sat at a small table near the rear exit, reading thick hardcovers that made others squint. Real estate investment. Business biographies. Leadership psychology. Always with that little black notebook open beside him, filled with tight, neat handwriting. He never let anyone see inside. Some of the younger staff made fun of him. "Bro thinks he's writing the next Wall Street memoir," one of them chuckled once, holding a matcha latte in one hand and his ego in the other. Harold heard it. He didn't flinch. Just turned the page of his book and kept writing. They didn't know what that notebook really held. They didn't know that Harold had once sat on the other side of those glass doors, not as a guard, but as a CEO. 15 years earlier, Harold Lewis wore tailored suits, flew economy not because he had to but because he liked the quiet humility of it. He ran a modest logistics company in New Jersey, black-owned, respected, profitable. He and his wife, Denise, had a 3-bedroom home in Plainfield with a maple tree out front and Sunday dinners that smelled like cornbread and oxtail. Then came 2008. The crash devoured everything. Clients defaulted. Contracts fell apart. The bank stopped returning his calls. He tried to save it, took out a second mortgage, borrowed from old friends, but it all crumbled. Denise couldn't take the weight. One night, she packed a bag and left a note that simply said, "I'm sorry. I can't watch you drown." The house was foreclosed. The office locked. His phone stopped ringing. And no one hired a 52-year-old black man with a failed business on his resume, not for what he was worth. So he took the job no one else would, night security at Riddle Partners. That's when the silence began. No one asked who he was. No one wanted to know. But every day, Harold woke up, put on his uniform, straightened his tie, and stood by that door. He watched the world that had forgotten him walk past like he wasn't there. But he remembered. He remembered what it felt like to build something from nothing. And in the quiet, he began building again. Harold didn't talk about the day his company died. Not because he couldn't, because he chose not to. Some pain sits so deep it becomes sacred. You don't parade it around. You just live with it. Quietly. At Riddle Partners, he became part of the scenery. The walls, the carpet, the background jazz of corporate life. The black man in the corner who nodded politely and never asked for anything. They assumed that's all he had ever been. But behind Harold's calm eyes was a man who had tasted risk, who'd once negotiated contracts in boardrooms and closed 6-figure deals with nothing but a smile and a handshake. who had built his first trucking route from a borrowed van and a borrowed dream. They didn't know the nights he spent at home, if you could call his one-room sublet home, listening to financial podcasts, rereading loan documents, devouring YouTube lectures about commercial real estate like they were scripture. They didn't see how, even when his back ached from 12-hour shifts, he sat up straight in a folding chair at adult learning centers to take night classes. His classmates half his age. His notebooks always full. Every spare dollar he earned went toward buying back his future. His first investment was a one-bedroom foreclosure in Newark. A mess. Mold on the ceilings. No heat. But Harold knew sweat equity. He cleaned it himself. Painted the walls. Repaired what he could. Called in favors for what he couldn't. Rented it. Then bought another. And another. He moved slowly. Carefully. Always quietly. Never the flashy guy. Never the one to gloat. While the execs at Riddle bought new watches and complained about their Hampton summer homes, Harold collected keys. While they laughed at him for reading too much, Harold studied lease agreements and zoning laws. While they forgot his name, Harold built a network, other black and brown professionals, laborious, small-time investors, people who knew what it meant to be overlooked and underestimated. They called themselves The Fold, a private group of forgotten minds who met monthly to trade knowledge and share leads. No suits. No applause. Just purpose. One day, in his 10th year at Riddle, Harold quietly co-signed on a commercial strip mall in Jersey City. His name wasn't on the front page of the paperwork, but his signature was buried deep inside. He kept showing up for work, kept checking badges, kept holding the door for interns who never said thank you. But inside, the fire was roaring again. The turning point came during a holiday party. Champagne flowed. Music blasted. One of the partners drunkenly pointed at Harold and joked, "Hey, look who made it. You're not off cleaning toilets tonight." Everyone laughed. Harold didn't. He just looked the man in the eye. Not angry. Not bitter. Just steady. And that night, he went home, opened his notebook, and wrote a single line. "They still don't see me. That's my advantage." By year 15, Harold had equity in 5 properties. By year 16, he was mentoring 2 young brothers from Newark who reminded him of himself at 23, full of hunger but no map. By year 17, the opportunity came. The building that housed Riddle Partners was up for silent sale. The owners were old, tired, and wanted out, quickly, quietly. No fanfare. Harold pounced. He contacted his Fold. They pooled funds, brought in trusted lenders, negotiated fiercely. And when the final signature hit the dotted line, Harold Lewis, the man who once scrubbed vomit from the marble floor after a partner's birthday bender, became the new landlord of the firm that had never once asked what he was capable of. He didn't scream it, didn't flaunt it. He just waited until Monday. And then, he walked through those glass doors not as security, but as the man who now held the keys. The morning air was crisp. Sunlight painted the marble floors gold as Harold stepped through the revolving doors of the building he had once guarded like a forgotten relic. But this time, he didn't wear his security uniform. This time, he wore a tailored gray suit, crisp white shirt, a navy blue tie, and that same black notebook, worn, weathered, and full. The receptionist looked up, halfway through her daily morning, Harold, before the words stuck in her throat. She blinked. "Oh, good morning, Mr. Lewis." Mr. Lewis. He didn't correct her. He simply smiled, nodded once, and kept walking. The usual buzz of the office was replaced by tension. Confusion. All weekend, whispers had spread like wildfire. Friday evening, a partner's badge hadn't worked. By Sunday, word had leaked, the building had been sold. Quietly. Completely. Now, on Monday, the truth would walk through the front doors. And it wore Harold's face. When he entered the Riddle boardroom, the partners were already seated. Suits ironed, brows furrowed. The oldest, Mr. Vance, half rose from his chair and said, "Mr. Lewis, what's the meaning of this?" Harold placed his notebook on the table, calm as ever. "I figured after 17 years, we should finally have a proper conversation." There was a silence that stretched. Then someone scoffed, "So what, you bought the building? That's..." Harold raised a hand, not rudely, just firmly. Yes, he said. My partners and I closed on the purchase last Friday. We now own this property, and 6 others in this district. This floor, these offices, your parking garage, the gym, all included. You can't just... I didn't just do anything. I built. Quietly. Strategically. While you ignored me, I studied you. Watched who you fired. Watched who you promoted. Listened to how you talk when you think no one important is around. He tapped his notebook. I wrote it all down. Mr. Vance's voice cracked. This is outrageous. We'll find another space. Harold nodded. You're welcome to. But you should know, your new lease will reflect the current market rate. That's roughly triple what you've been paying. Another partner slammed their hand on the table. This is revenge. Harold leaned forward, voice calm. Steady. No. This is a standard business transaction. You see, I learned from the best, from watching all of you. He opened his notebook and turned a few pages. Let me tell you what this is not, he said. It's not bitterness. Not vengeance. I'm not here to humiliate anyone. I'm here to do business. But I am here to change how this building works. He placed a printed document in the center of the table, the new lease. There's a clause, he said. All tenants must commit to a code of workplace respect. Zero tolerance for classism, racism, elitism, any violation, and the lease can be reviewed or revoked. Someone muttered, That's ridiculous. Harold smiled faintly. No. That's overdue. Then he paused, and added with quiet steel. 17 years ago, I watched a man in this room scream at a janitor for not emptying his trash fast enough. That janitor died the following week of a stroke. No one even sent flowers. So no, this isn't revenge. This is correction. The room fell completely silent. No one laughed. No one sneered. They couldn't. Because in Harold's presence, in that moment, they saw not a security guard. Not a background character. They saw a man who had endured humiliation, condescension, and silence, and still rose without spite. Outside the boardroom, the building buzzed. Word spread like wildfire. The man they had once walked past without a second glance, now held the keys. Not to lock them out, but to open a door they never even saw being built. Harold could have disappeared. He could have stayed behind closed doors, collecting rent checks, letting lawyers handle tenant issues while he vacationed somewhere warm, far away from Riddle's cold glass hallways. But that wasn't who he was. Instead, every morning at 7:45, he still showed up. Same elevator. Same tie. Same warm nods to the people walking in. But now, when he opened the front doors, people stopped. They smiled. They shook his hand. Good morning, Mr. Lewis. The receptionist stood to greet him now. Not out of fear, but because they finally saw him. The junior execs who once called him security now paused to ask his thoughts on a market report. And once, when the new intern spilled her coffee in the elevator and stammered an apology, Harold simply took a napkin from his coat and said, No big deal. You okay? She nodded, eyes wide, and whispered to a co-worker later, He owns the building, and he still carries napkins in his pocket. But that was Harold. Because owning the building was never about owning people. It was about creating space. He founded the Lewis Initiative, a mentorship and investment program for overlooked workers, janitors, receptionists, overnight security, the ones no one asked about during board meetings. He held Saturday workshops on financial literacy, real estate, and investing. He taught people how to build credit, how to form LLCs, how to buy one property, then 2, then 10. The same way he had. This world will never invite you to the table, he told them. But that's okay. You can build your own. Just make sure you leave a chair for the next person. One day, a former partner of Riddle, now retired, ran into Harold in the lobby. He extended a hand, unsure. Harold shook it, warmly, firmly. I underestimated you, the man said. Harold smiled, eyes kind. No, sir. You saw what you were trained to see. But I was never just a uniform. I was a man. Same as you. The man nodded, almost ashamed. You forgive us? Harold gave a soft laugh. I outgrew needing that. He looked around the lobby, once sterile and cold, now alive with plants, art from local schools, and the buzz of people who mattered. Then he added, I didn't do all this to prove anything. I did it so no one else like me would have to be invisible to survive. Years passed. The building changed hands again, but Harold's influence didn't fade. People still told stories. The man with the notebook. The guard who became the owner. The one who taught them not just how to rise, but how to reach back. Respect everybody, even those that are inferior to you. Regardless of color or race, everybody deserves to be respected. Don't make anybody feel insignificant because you want to feel superior. Respect isn't earned by titles or offices. It's in how you treat the ones you think are invisible. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that inspire, challenge, and stay with you.